A new pope, Nicholas V, was in the chair of St. Peter when in 1447 he sent another cardinal to the realm of St. Stephen to assist in organizing another crusade against the Ottomans. Another crusading army assembled under the leadership of János Hunyadi, who still had a reputation for invincibility. The plan was to have the Hungarian, Croatian, German, Bohemian, Vlachian, etc. crusader army meet up with the Albanian rebel forces of George Skenderbeg and then advance together into Ottoman territory. Hunyadi tried to get his old partner in crime, George Branković, the despot of Serbia, to join the crusade. But Branković refused. He did not want to break what remained of the peace agreement with the Sultan, the same peace agreement that sealed the fate of Varna. The Crusader army marched south in the autumn of 1448. It never met up with the Albanian forces that were blocked and delayed by the Ottomans. The Crusaders met the Ottoman army on Kosovo Field in October of 1448, and the Ottomans wiped the floor with them. János Hunyadi again managed to escape the disaster with his life. On the retreat through Serbia, Hunyadi was imprisoned by despot Branković, allegedly because the remnants of Hunyadi's retreating army pillaged Branković's estates as revenge for not joining the crusade. Branković released Hunyadi under the condition that he hand back the formerly Branković estates that were given to Hunyadi in the bargain before Varna. Meanwhile, the absence of both Hunyadi and the Prince of Vlachia Vladislav II allowed a certain Vlad III Tepes, son of Prince Vlad II of Vlachia, to seize the Vlachian throne with Ottoman help, until Vladislav II came back from the crusade, cut that out, and kicked out Vlad III. When Regent Hunyadi returned to Hungary, he was angry. He broke off the engagement between his son Ladislav and Elizabeth of Celje, who was Branković's granddaughter. And at the Diet, Hunyadi got enough support to strip Branković of all of his estates in the realm by force. That little war ended in 1451 with an exchange of land and money, and the betrothal of Hunyadi's younger son Matthias to Elizabeth of Celje. Sometime between 1449 and 1451, the Ottomans agreed to a 3-year peace. Around the same time, Hunyadi and a few others in the regency were concerned that the regency was not in the Diet's good graces after the failure at Kosovo. The Diet was demanding that King Ladislav V be returned to the realm. The regency had to publicly take those demands to the king's current guardian, Friedrich III of Austria, who was also receiving similar demands from the estates of Bohemia and their leader Podebrady, and from estates in parts of Austria where Friedrich himself was serving as Ladislav's regent. Importantly for our story, the return of the king would mean the end of Hunyadi's regency. So in 1450, secretly behind the backs of the Diet, Regent Hunyadi, Palatine Garay, and the voivode of Transylvania Nicholas of Ilok made an agreement with Frederick III to not release King Ladislav V until 1458, the king's 18th birthday. This, in theory, extended the regencies in all of Ladislav's domains for another 8 years, and I say in theory because other people had different ideas. In 1452, while Hunyadi was busy dealing with other matters, including Jan Jiskra again, and Friedrich III was away in Rome, getting crowned as the Holy Roman Emperor by the Pope, a revolt broke out in Austria supported by some of the nobility of Hungary and Bohemia. The leading figures of the revolt were Ulrich of Celje and Austrian noble Ulrich Einziger. The rebels laid siege to Vienna Neustadt, where Ladislav V was being held, demanding his release. On the 1st of September 1452, Friedrich III agreed to release Ladislav. Ladislav was then taken to Vienna and, under the guidance of the two Ulrichs, began his rule as Duke of Austria, and prepared to assume his positions as King of Bohemia, King of Hungary, Dalmatia, Croatia, etc. Friedrich III did keep possession of the Holy Crown of Hungary, but since Ladislav V was already legitimately and legally crowned at a few months old, this was not going to cause immediate problems. In northern Hungary, Ladislav's release was either the cause of Jiškra willingly accepting the regency's offers of peace, or coincided with Jiškra's military defeat, or both. After which, Jiškra seems to have entered the king's personal retinue. However, the Bohemian Hussite mercenaries he worked with would still remain a menace, and Jiškra would later be tasked by the king to defend the border against them. In early 1453, a diet of the realm of St. Stephen was summoned at Pressburg, just a stone's throw away from Vienna. At the diet, the king was welcomed by the estates, and Regent Hunyadi resigned his position. The king granted pardons to everyone who took up arms against his legitimacy. It was restated that land grants made by the most serene Lady Queen Elizabeth and the late Lord King of Poland are declared void, except those that will later be legalized, and of course that all illegal fortifications must be destroyed. The king also made a slew of new royal appointments, which meant that for the first time in 14 years every open seat and position in government was filled, and several new positions were created. To appease Hunyadi and his supporters, the king appointed János Hunyadi Captain General of the kingdom, gave him positions to administer revenues of the royal estates, confirmed any and all land grants Hunyadi made to his supporters, and created him the first ever hereditary count or perpetual hereditary Ispan or Župan, the Ispan of Bistrice in Transylvania. The Župan or Ispan was the highest local official and was appointed by the king. The other local officials were usually elected by the local nobility from amongst themselves. It was desirable to name a Župan who owned land in the area, which made him a member of the local nobility. There were cases of the perpetual Ispanate grant like this before, but it was tied to areas around seats of appointed offices, like the great church prelates, and maybe a few great royal offices, but never before was a title like that tied to a single family. Hunyadi's son Ladislav was also soon appointed as Ban of Dalmatia and Croatia after the death of Ban Peter of Talovac, the last living member of the Talovac brothers who came to prominence under King Sigismund. After the Diet of Pressburg, Ladislav returned to Vienna and negotiated with Podebrady in Bohemia. In return for supporting the king, Podebrady was created royal governor of Bohemia. Ladislav was eventually crowned as King of Bohemia on the 28th of October 1453 in Prague. But a popular sentiment was spreading in Bohemia that a Catholic king might be unsuitable to govern a realm of Hussites. Back in the realm of St. Stephen, with the return of the king, government seemed to have moved on without Hunyadi. He had lost most of his importance. His magnate supporters abandoned him in favor of the king. Even his son's tutor, humanist Ivan Vites, Bishop of Varad, who seemed to have owed much to Hunyadi, became one of the king's close advisors. But in a lot of their eyes, Hunyadi was too power-hungry and too willful, while the young king could be manipulated, professionally guided. But the minor nobility still supported Hunyadi, either because of his years of popularity or because the minor nobility was protesting the absence of the king. The king was in Vienna or Prague, surrounded by various competing advisors. So with the support in the Diet, Hunyadi felt that he could defy the king with regards to withholding the royal revenues. On the advice of Ivan Vites, the king requested that the Diet strip Hunyadi of those revenue-related offices that he was clearly incapable of performing, thus showing the king's respect for the Diet and proportionally responding to Hunyadi's disobedience. The Diet, informed of the king's will by messengers, refused to listen to an absentee king and stuck with their former regent. This would be an ongoing minor constitutional crisis. because there were far more concerning matters afoot. In May of 1453, the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II conquered Constantinople.